Good morning, roommate. We're going to be looking at this text, Wind and Water Change Earth. Please make sure you have that ready. We're going to be looking at the text called Tornado. This is a example of the page. So open up, find the text Tornado, and be ready to start reading with us. Before we start the text Tornado, we are going to watch a short video to introduce more of the unit. It's something we meant to do in the last video, but I accidentally skipped it. So I'll go ahead and play that for us briefly. Okay, so this video is meant to introduce the unit. It introduces our essential question and just gives you kind of a context for our learning or what we're going to be learning about. So go ahead and follow along and watch the video as we begin.
Wind and water change Earth. Earth's landscape is constantly changing. Wind and water erosion can damage Earth. Hurricanes can flood towns and cause beach erosion. Tornadoes can damage homes and rip trees out of the ground. Wind and water can also create and add beautiful landforms to Earth over time. How do we react to changes in nature?
So that was just a quick introductory video. Next, we're going to turn and open up our text to the text called Tornado, which is on page 6, starts on page 6. And we're going to read the text Tornado. As we read, please follow along with your finger, and then we're going to go back at the end of each section, and it looks like it goes from page 6 to page 9. So we're going to go back and identify important things that we've learned and annotate those important things over here in the notes section. I'm only going to do that a couple of times with you guys because we've practiced the skill so many times that I think you can do it closer to being on your own. So I'll do page 6 and 7 with you for annotations. Of course, we'll read the whole text all the way through before we come back to page 6 to do our notes. And then the other two pages, 8 and 9, I want you to find the important details on those pages. So let's go back to page 6. And before we begin, let's go ahead and take a quick look through our text. Of course, this text is called Tornado. So you can make a pretty good prediction that this text is going to be about a tornado or about tornadoes in general. And you can see here, there's a caption. It says, tornadoes can damage or destroy homes, cars, and land in the picture on page 6. And it shows ways that tornadoes have done damage. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, but you can see it on your own, and it's there. You can see that the cars have all been thrown together. This tree has been uprooted. That means that it's been torn out from the ground, and so the roots are up. And then here you can see that a house has been destroyed. The roof, part of the roof has been destroyed, as well as it looks like it may have been lifted off of its foundation, off of the ground, and tossed somewhere else by the tornado. That's something that tornadoes do. Well, here is a graphic that shows how tornadoes are formed. It's a little bit blurry here. I think it's probably more clear in your text, but here you can see that it's showing at the beginning we have air moving in opposite directions on the land and above the earth, and that continues to happen as the air continues to move. It forms a spiral, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And then here you can see that the air in the inside of the tornado is coming up and out. On the outside of the tornado, it's going around, and it continues to do that. This has to do with warm and cold air. Luckily, we don't have to worry about tornadoes here in California. You can see California is over here on this side, on the next to the Pacific Ocean on the left-hand side. There's no risk of tornadoes here, but in the picture on the bottom of page 7, it shows where tornadoes happen. Most often here where it's green, instead of tornadoes, a lot of the time they'll have hurricanes. And the same is true over here on the right-hand side where Florida and the East Coast are. They'll have hurricanes there. In California, we don't have tornadoes. We have to worry about other natural things like earthquakes, but not tornadoes, luckily. So that is page 6 and 7, the graphics. Let's look at page 8 and 9. On page 8, we can see a picture of some damage that has happened after a tornado. You can imagine that would be a lot of cleanup work to do. And then this shows what people need to do during a tornado to stay safe. So in the pictures on page 9, you see students at school practicing, just like we practice earthquake drills. They practice tornado drills. They don't have earthquake drills. And the reason why they would go into a hallway like this is because there's no windows, and tornadoes would likely break the windows and make them come into the classroom with flying glass. And so they go in the hallway where there's no windows that could break and hurt them. Also on page 9, on the top right here, you can see on the bottom of page 9, but the top right picture, you can see a woman and another, you can see two girls coming up out of the earth. And that's because during the tornado, they hid underground in a tornado shelter. And then on the right here, they have some places like school auditoriums and things like that. If your house is not going to be safe in a tornado, like if you lived in a trailer or just not a very good house, then you might come to a school basement or something like that to stay safe from the tornado, because it would be safer there than it would be in your own home if you didn't have a good underground shelter like the people in the picture above do. Also, after tornadoes, if your home was destroyed, people might live in shelters like this, temporary shelters, until their house could be rebuilt or they could find somewhere new to live. So that's the text called Tornadoes. We just did a quick picture walk. We're going to go back to page 6 and we're going to start reading the text Tornadoes. Be ready to listen and follow along. Point to the word tornado and be ready to start when the video starts, or when the read aloud starts.
Short read 1. Remember to annotate as you read.
Tornado. It's the fastest, most unpredictable wind on the planet. It spins around, forming a funnel shape, and destroys everything in its path. It tears apart buildings, uproots trees, and tosses cars as if they were toys. Although a tornado may not last very long, its damage can take years to repair.
Tornadoes can damage or destroy homes, cars, and land. This diagram shows how a tornado is formed.
Tornadoes usually come from thunderclouds. Warm air on the ground rises to meet cooler air moving down toward Earth. When the air masses meet, a large thundercloud forms. As warm and cool air swirl in the thundercloud, it forms a funnel. If the funnel is strong, it drops from the cloud and becomes a tornado.
The area where tornadoes occur most often is known as Tornado Alley.
Tornadoes can do serious damage to Earth and our environment. Some tornadoes are powerful enough to level forests and foothills. That means many animals end up losing their habitats. Fish are forced to go deeper in lakes and streams. After a tornado, the dirt and debris that remain in the air cause pollution. What if there's a tornado warning? Read what Adam Reynolds and his family did. We were eating dinner and heard the sirens. The sky became dark and it started hailing. We rushed to the basement with our transistor radio. If you don't have a basement, go inside a closet. Listen to the radio for information and stay safe.
During a tornado warning, people gather in hallways, basements, and shelters.
So that is the text tornado. That was our first read. It's always good to do a first read where we listen and we hear how smoothly the reader can read. And that's what our goal is when we practice our fluency skills, is to get smooth just like the reader. So tornado, going back to paragraph 1. We're going to zoom in on paragraph 1. We're going to practice doing some annotations together, and then underlining our important details and making notes is what I mean by annotations. And then you're going to do the same thing with the remainder of the text. Okay, so let's reread paragraph 1. Read it slowly and together. If you can, read with me. It's the fastest, most unpredictable wind on the planet. It spins around, forming a funnel shape, and destroys everything in its path. It tears apart buildings, uproots trees, and tosses cars as if they were toys. Although a tornado may not last very long, its damage can take years to repair. So what is the most important things that we've learned about tornadoes from this paragraph? So 1, we've learned that it's very fast. It's a fast, unpredictable wind, so it's hard to know exactly when it's going to happen. However, they actually do have tornado warnings when tornadoes form. They have a little bit of a warning. Unlike earthquakes, we can't predict earthquakes at all. They just happen when they happen. But tornadoes, at least, you can hear the siren and you know that it's about to come, and so you can find shelter, so if you can. So it says it spins around, forming a funnel shape. I'm going to underline funnel shape. I'm going to underline that it destroys everything in its path. That's important. Then next, it talks about the different things that are destroyed. We don't need to underline that. Those are things that happen, but they're not the most important details. And then the rest of the paragraph. Although a tornado may not last very long, its damage can take years to repair. That's good to know, but it's not the most important thing that we're learning about tornadoes. So I'm not going to underline those details. So I'm going to look for, in this paragraph, I was looking for descriptions of the tornado, like what it looks like, how it acts, what it is. And I want to go ahead and write a note saying what a tornado is in my notes. So using the details I got from the text, I want to go ahead and write my notes down describing what a tornado is. And I don't have very much space here. So I would start like at the very top of your note space, because otherwise you're going to run out of space. So I'm going to move it all the way to the top and then write my note. I'll make sure I have the right font size before we begin, and there we go. Okay, so I'm just explaining what tornadoes are. So tornadoes are I'm taking my information from here, fast wind that makes a funnel and destroys many things. And that's enough for now. I don't need to go into many details. I'm just, again, taking the most important information from the text and putting it here in my notes. If you are not done writing this note down, again, go ahead and pause the video so you can finish writing it down. And then we will move on. If you haven't finished, pause the video and finish your work before we continue. Okay, so pausing the video now. Hopefully by now you have finished writing your notes. If you have not finished writing your notes, please again pause the video so you can finish. We're going to move on to page 7. On page 7 we're going to read, and again just practice identifying the most important details. Don't forget to underline as you read, and then after that I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can practice on page 8 and 9 on your own. So looking at paragraphs 2 and 3, we have 2 opportunities to practice here. Paragraph 2 talks about, you can see from the diagram right above paragraph 2, it's talking about how tornadoes are made. So let's read carefully and find the details about how tornadoes are made. It says tornadoes usually come from thunderclouds. Warm air on the ground rises to meet cooler air moving down towards Earth. When the air masses meet, a large thundercloud forms. So this talks about the first step of making a tornado. And what does it say that it comes from? It comes from a thunderstorm. So as we read on, it says, it explains more details. As warm and cool air swirls in the thundercloud, it forms a funnel. If the funnel is strong, it drops from the cloud and becomes a tornado. So as it gets stronger, the funnel moves lower and lower towards the earth. Once it touches the ground, that's what makes it a tornado. If it does not touch the ground, then it's just a really strong wind. It's not actually a tornado. It's just a storm. So just a thunderstorm. So once it touches the ground, it becomes a tornado. So let's go ahead and write our text notes for paragraph 3. Or first, let's underline our important details for paragraph 2 and 3. And then we'll write our text notes. So it says, tornadoes come from thunderclouds. Let's underline that part. They come from thunderclouds. Warm air on the ground rises to meet cooler air moving down towards Earth. So I'm going to say warm, I'm going to underline warm air and cooler air. Then it says that a large thundercloud forms. Well, we already know that it comes from a large thundercloud, so I'm not going to underline that part. As the warm and cool air swirl in the thundercloud, it forms a funnel. I'm going to underline how it forms a funnel. So air swirls and forms a funnel. If the funnel is strong, it drops from the cloud. So I'm going to underline drops from the cloud and becomes a tornado. So this is our important details about tornadoes from the text. Now let's go ahead and make our notes. Paragraph 2 and 3, we're just going to combine them together and make our notes for paragraphs 2 and 3. So let me make my text box bigger. When I'm done writing the notes, don't forget to pause so you can finish typing them. So tornadoes I'm going to say form from thunderclouds when warm and cool air meet and swirl together until they touch the ground. So here is our detail about about tornadoes that tell us just a summary of how tornadoes are created. Go ahead, pause the video now. Once you have this done, then you can move on to page 8 and 9 and finish reading again, underlining important details, and writing your notes. If you haven't finished, pause the video and finish your work before we continue. Okay, today we are going to watch a couple of videos about tornadoes, as well as one about tornadoes and hurricanes. Our first video is asking the question, why are tornadoes so hard to predict? So we're going to watch this video, and as we watch, just pay attention to what you're learning new about tornadoes that maybe the text didn't tell you. Then I'll play the second video, which is another 5 minutes. Enjoy. If you choose not to watch this, have a great day. If you're continuing on, enjoy your learning, and then have a great afternoon, because this is the last part of our language arts / science lesson for today.
Hi, it's Doug. Making a mini tornado like I'm doing here is so fun. But tornadoes in real life are no fun at all. I grew up in a place where tornadoes would happen every year. Luckily, no one ever got hurt. But when a tornado was spotted, the town would sound the sirens and everyone knew to take shelter. Someone named Hai Ming has a question about tornadoes.
So before we continue, you'll notice that in the little top right corner that Mr. Doug is showing you a tornado experiment. That is a really cool experiment to do at home. You need to have a special thing to screw into the top and the bottom of the two bottles. There's actually 2 soda bottles here, and you need this green connector. It doesn't have to be green, but you need this thing in order for this project to work. So if you would like to learn how to do a tornado in a bottle, you can have your family text me, and I will send them the link for where to get this device, as well as some instructions. But let's go ahead and listen to the question today.
Let's give him a call now.
Hi, Doug.
Hey, Hai Ming.
I have a question for you. Why is it so hard to predict a tornado?
That's a great question. Tornadoes are a type of extreme weather made of powerful, swirling winds. Some tornadoes are strong enough to tear buildings apart, like this one. Watch this. It tears the roof off that house. You see that? The most powerful tornadoes can leave behind entire towns that have been destroyed. That's what you're seeing here. Because of how dangerous tornadoes can be, weather forecasters try to warn people if a tornado is going to happen. That way everyone nearby can get somewhere safe. The more time people have before a tornado hits, the less likely they are to get hurt. So forecasters try to predict tornadoes as far ahead of time as they can. But for most of history, the only warning you got about a tornado was if you looked outside and you saw one. Today, tornado warnings have gotten a lot better, and that's thanks to tools like radar, which help forecasters see patterns in the weather. But tornado warnings still aren't great. Most times, people only get warned about 13 minutes ahead of time. That's not much time at all. What do you think makes it so hard to predict tornadoes ahead of time? Now would be a good time to pause the video and discuss. Okay, you ready? It might help us figure this out if we compare tornadoes with another form of extreme weather, hurricanes. Unlike tornadoes, hurricanes are pretty easy to predict. Usually, hurricane warnings give people at least 2 days before a hurricane hits. That's enough time to pack up your things and get somewhere safe. But hurricanes form very differently than tornadoes do. You see, hurricanes start out over the ocean. Then they travel for days or even weeks before they hit the land. Scientists can easily see the clouds of a hurricane forming, so they can figure out where a hurricane is likely to hit and how strong it will be. Tornadoes aren't like that. They form over land and quickly swoop down out of the sky to touch the ground. Tornadoes can form and start causing destruction within minutes. Scientists don't have days or weeks to predict them like they do with hurricanes. Instead, scientists look at weather maps showing big thunderstorms like this. This is a storm moving across the U.S. state of Oklahoma. Scientists put together weather images like a video to try and spot where tornadoes are forming. Did you catch the tornado here? Let's watch again. The tornado starts right there on the edge of the storm. It was really quick. Tornadoes are there, and then they're gone. So it's hard to predict exactly where and when a tornado will hit. But scientists have figured out that at the very least, they can pay attention to what weather conditions are likely to lead to tornadoes. That way, people can be on the lookout. The first thing scientists look for is a thunderstorm. But not every thunderstorm creates a tornado. Scientists check for strong winds from different directions, coming together in just the right way to create a vortex. Kind of like when you unplug the drain in a bathtub. The water starts to swirl and makes a vortex going down the drain. In a tornado, there's a vortex of air, but it's going upward into the storm clouds above. Today, scientists are working on better ways to predict tornadoes using computers. They hope that eventually they'll be able to predict tornadoes up to an hour in advance, so people have more time to prepare. But tornadoes will never have as much warning time as things like hurricanes. Luckily, people in tornado zones often have basements and tornado shelters which can protect them, even if a tornado comes quickly. So in summary, scientists know that tornadoes come from big thunderstorms with strong spinning winds. But predicting exactly when and where tornadoes will hit is still really difficult. That's all for this week's question. Thanks, Hai Meng, for asking it.
So next we're going to watch the next part of the video, or next video about hurricanes and tornadoes. Pay attention to this video from Mira in 2nd grade also, and she's asking, what's worse, a hurricane or a tornado? At the beginning, it's going to ask you to discuss, and we learned a teeny bit about hurricanes in the last video, so you can think about what you think is worse, and then watch the rest of the video and make your final decision later.
Hi, it's Doug. I recently had a chance to step inside this thing called a hurricane simulator. It's a machine that creates winds up to 80 miles an hour, just like in a real hurricane. Now, unlike a real hurricane, there's no danger involved, so standing in this thing was actually kind of fun. I definitely would not want to experience a hurricane in real life. Someone named Mira has a question about hurricanes. Let's give her a call now. Hi, Mira.
Hi, Doug. I have a question for you. What's worse, a hurricane or a tornado?
That's a great question. Before I say anything, stop and think about this. Which one do you think is worse, a hurricane or tornado? Now would be a good time to pause the video and discuss. Okay, you ready? When I first thought about this question, I thought, for sure, a hurricane has to be worse. In a previous episode about hurricanes, I showed you how a hurricane is a huge storm, sometimes bigger than an entire state. We also saw just how strong a hurricane's winds are, strong enough to knock down power lines, break windows, even rip the roofs off of houses. Look at that. And that's not all hurricanes do either. Hurricanes cause flooding, both because of heavy rain and their strong winds push ocean waves far up onto the shore. But are hurricanes worse than tornadoes? To figure out the answer, we have to look to meteorologists. Those are scientists who study the weather. They've thought about this question a lot, and they've noticed that tornadoes and hurricanes are both really bad storms, each in their own ways. To say which one is worse depends what you mean by worse. For example, if by worse you mean which one has stronger winds, well, you might think hurricanes have stronger winds, since hurricanes are bigger storms. Meteorologists measure the wind speed of both of these, and they've discovered that hurricane winds can reach as high as 150 miles an hour. But here's what's surprising. Even the smallest tornadoes, like this one, have incredible winds, sometimes winds that blow over 350 miles an hour. That's way stronger. So when it comes to the strength of their winds, tornadoes are actually worse than hurricanes. But strong winds aren't the only way to consider what's worse. What about how much harm they do? Sadly, both hurricanes and tornadoes harm people every year. But by keeping track of the numbers, meteorologists have discovered that tornadoes cause more deaths than hurricanes. Partly, that's because tornadoes happen so much more often than hurricanes do. By checking meteorologist websites, we can find out that there are over 1,000 tornadoes every year, but each year only about 10 hurricanes happen. There's another reason why tornadoes might harm more people, and that's because tornadoes are hard to predict. They happen so suddenly that people don't always have time to get out of the way. So tornadoes have stronger winds, and they do more harm to people than hurricanes do. So far, it's sounding like tornadoes are worse than hurricanes. But there's still one way that hurricanes could be considered worse than tornadoes. We have to think about what happens after a hurricane or tornado. When people come back and find their cars, their homes, sometimes almost everything they own just gone. That's when they have to clean up the mess and start rebuilding. Sometimes people even have to rebuild entire cities. All of that is the damage caused by a hurricane or tornado. Because hurricanes are so much bigger in size than tornadoes, they wind up doing more damage to homes and buildings. In fact, it costs more money to fix the damage from one hurricane than it does to fix the damage from all the tornadoes in an entire year. So in summary, hurricanes and tornadoes are both storms you wouldn't want to mess with. Hurricanes are larger, so they cause more damage to people's homes and buildings. But tornadoes have stronger winds and they harm more people. Which is worse? The answer really depends on which of these different things you consider. That's all for this week's question. Thanks, Mira, for asking it.
All right, that's it for our math and science lesson for today. I hope you are having a great day, and don't forget to check